Hello and welcome to Fiction Fans, a podcast where we read books and other words too. I'm Lily.
And I'm Sara.
And I completely just forgot the thing that we've been saying the whole time. Oh! Gosh.
This is going to be a recording.
Sara, what's something great that's happened lately?
I got to meet up with Ben from Literature and Lo-Fi. I went to the UK, which technically was my good thing for an episode that we recorded earlier but comes out afterwards. So you're getting it twice. But I was able to meet up with Ben, and it was really, really nice to see him and spend time in person.
That's wonderful.
He is every bit as lovely as he appears in his videos.
Well, I was going to say congratulations, but that's weird. Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, very much a good thing.
My good thing is that when this episode comes out, it will be almost exactly 1 year since we started the podcast.
Woohoo!
We made it.
I mean, a year is a lot longer than I thought we would do. So we did make it.
Yeah, so that's pretty exciting. Well, Sara, what are you drinking tonight?
In honor of my visit with Ben, I'm drinking cider. Not any of the cider that I drank while visiting him, sadly.
Well, that's because that's been drunk now.
Well, I did have some bottles that didn't make it to the US, which was very tragic. And I'm very sad that I can't get that cider here. But the cider that I'm drinking is good regardless.
Well, that's good.
And what are you drinking, Lily?
I'm just drinking some nondescript red wine. I'm not sure it even has a name, but it did come out of a bag. So, you know.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, it's just funny. Well, since this is a book podcast, have you read anything good lately?
Yeah, I finally got around to reading the third Phoenix Feather book by Sherwood Smith yes, technically I read it in January, but this episode is coming out in February, so I'm saying it counts for February She Wrote, which is a month-long reading project, reading event created again by Ben from Literature and Lo-Fi. This has turned into a very Ben-centric introduction. He is encouraging people to read books by authors who use she, her pronouns. So we have a couple of episodes that will fit in that category that are coming out in February. And I'm trying to make my personal reading fit with that.
Look at you, still doing personal reading.
I got to have something to answer this question with.
Listeners, I keep asking Sara if we should cut this question, and she says no. So every time I have to artfully dodge it, I want you to know it's entirely her fault.
Sorry, not sorry.
Well, I did read something this week, although it was terrible and I'm very mad at it.
What did you read?
I read this horrible article from the Harvard Business Review.
Well, why would you be reading something from the Harvard Business Review? I guess you do marketing work. Maybe it's less out of the way than it sounds.
It came up as a suggested article, and I was like, oh, the title, "Please stop using these phrases in meetings," seems like I'll browse that listicle, whatever. But oh my God, Sara, every single one of them is wrong.
So what are some of the phrases?
And also the article is so smarmy too. So the first phrase is, "We're going to wait 5 minutes for everyone to join."
Do they have an alternative?
Oh, they do. To make the most of those inevitable few minutes when you're waiting for stragglers, one idea is to start with brief tone-setting exercises. I often start by asking everyone to remove one distraction. This may mean moving something off their desk, opening a window in their room, or closing a window on their computer. You do not get to control my life like that.
Oh no.
Right off with this.
Oh no. No.
That's just the tone of the whole article.
That's horrible.
Oh, are you a human being? No. You're a work automaton, and anything that deviates from that is bad.
Jeez, that's awful.
Also, thank us for stepping on you. Like the bootlicker vibes in this article are so bad.
Yeah, that's a take.
And the problem is now I can't talk about Douglas Adams because I'm so mad.
I'm sorry. We do have to switch gears and talk about Douglas Adams.
At least it will put me in a better mood. So today we are going to be discussing The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams, an oldie but a goodie.
It's about time.
I think we should just say from the start, we're not going to be quarantining spoilers for this episode. It's a pretty popular book. There are movies.
It's been out for a while. There are some dubious quality TV shows, some better quality movies, as you say.
Daniel did make the joke that while I was rushing to finish this book in time, he was like, "Oh, we should just watch the movie." I do want to rewatch that, but no.
I'm pretty sure that I've seen it, but it's been a long time. I know that I started watching the 80s or whenever it came out TV show because it was on Netflix or BritBox or Amazon Prime or something. It was not great.
How can you not like Martin Freeman and Alan Rickman?
Well, they were not in the TV show that I was watching.
No, I know. I'm talking about the movie that's actually worth it.
It's true. They are great. I didn't realize that Alan Rickman was in this.
He's the android. He's Marvin.
Oh. Yeah, that makes sense.
It's fantastic.
It would be a good Marvin.
He is. I remember it being pretty close to the book, but it's been a while. Fun fact, I read this book as an ebook, which is only a relevant fun fact because in Hitchhiker's Guide, the Hitchhiker's Guide itself is an ebook, although a weird 70s concept of what an ebook would be.
It's kind of like a combination Google and ebook.
Well, there's a search function.
Yeah, but like everything is there. It feels, it really felt to me like proto Google.
But it only searches within Hitchhiker's Guide.
Yeah, so Hitchhiker's Guide was the equivalent of the internet.
But they already had an encyclopedia.
Yeah, but it wasn't online. Well, not that this was online.
Yeah. So it's just this website had a search function.
Yes. Yes.
But so reading the description of that, it had like all sorts of knobs and dials and looked like a giant calculator. That was fun while I was just like swiping through it on my phone. Like, technology. I only read it as an ebook because I apparently own the entire series except for the first one.
Convenient.
I have no idea how that happened.
You probably lent the first book to someone and never got it back.
I'm sure I did. I went to a used bookstore, couldn't find it. Their sci-fi section was entirely box sets of Wheel of Time or Stephen King novels. It was a little disappointing.
I like how Wheel of Time is science fiction.
I like Stephen King is science fiction.
Doesn't Stephen King genuinely have some science fiction books? Or maybe it's just that he has fantasy books.
I mean, sure, he has. Yes, he does. But for one entire bookcase of the two sci-fi bookcases to be Stephen King was a little gratuitous.
Maybe just a little bit.
I also wouldn't call Wheel of Time sci-fi, but my angst over that is manyfold.
Wheel of Time is not sci-fi. I think you probably could make an argument that there are sci-fi elements to it.
I don't mind it being in that section. I mind it replacing that section.
Yes.
Anyway, that was a long story to say I pirated it.
Womp womp.
I tried, okay? Anyway, Douglas Adams got one back on me because every instance of double L's in the entire novel were replaced by a space.
That would be hard to read. I'm impressed that you stuck with it and didn't just spend the $4.99 or however much. Actually, it's probably more than $4.99.
Yeah, ebooks aren't actually cheap.
Not if they're traditionally published. Indie ebooks are cheap or can be cheap.
Alas, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is not indie.
You're telling me this now.
Anyway, what I'm saying is it was a struggle, but I got there.
Very proud of you.
I'm glad I did, though. I haven't read this book since high school. I remember loving it.
It's been a long time since I read it. I think that I wasn't really in the right mood for it. Like, not that I didn't enjoy it, because I did enjoy it. I was kind of like, okay, how many pages until I get to the end of the book? But I think that was, like I said, a problem of where I was as a mood reader and not actually my feelings about the book.
I enjoyed reading it, but I had forgotten how dark it is.
I mean, it's quite dark and depressing. Actually.
Yeah, it's pretty horrible. I mean, it kind of gets glossed over because it's all in the context of, isn't this so quirky and funny? But some of those quirky and funny things are horrifying.
I mean, the Earth totally gets destroyed, for one.
I mean, that's not even on my list. You're not wrong, though. For me, it's the that scene with the whale and the petunia at the very end. Not the very end, very close to the end.
Close to the end, where they are falling through the sky and the whale goes splat.
Yeah. And you get like, well, I was going to say a page and a half, but those are pirated ebook pages. So I have no idea what that translates to. 2.5 screens of this like whale suddenly popping into existence, discovering itself, optimistically wondering what its place is going to be in the world, and then exploding on impact. The poor whale.
And it kind of goes into a lot of gruesome detail about it. I mean, not gruesome, but more than I was expecting.
I remember thinking the book was hilarious, which it is, of course. But maybe I just didn't appreciate how really pessimistic it is when I was a little edgelord teenager. Like Marvin, the depressed android robot. I just remember like absolutely loving him. I thought he was so cool and funny. Part of that might have been that he was played by Alan Rickman in the movie. But I had read it before the movie, or I saw the movie, I think before it came out. And now I'm reading it just like, oh, have they made robot therapists yet?
I felt so bad for Marvin. What a depressing life to like not have any option, no way of like getting better and treating himself.
Does Adams get into the inherent existential horror of immortality in some of his later books? I know not in this one.
Certainly not in Hitchhiker's Guide. It's been long enough since I have read the entire series, but a long time ago, so I don't remember.
Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously it's been addressed in satirical writing, but that element of it comes up for me with Marvin, because it's not just hating your existence, but
there being no end to your existence.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, I mean it's a really rough life.
Yeah,
or
it is.
Electronic life. I'm not sure that the super cheery, upbeat other robots or AIs that we see are that much better, to be honest.
No, there's a lot of like question of free will, right?
Yeah.
They're only happy because they were programmed to be happy.
Mm-hmm. And how miserable to have to be that continuously cheery about opening a door for someone for eternity.
And that's why Marvin is so depressed, right? Because he sees that.
Mm-hmm.
So I still love the character, but in a very different way.
I'd say Marvin needs a hug, but he probably would not want that.
Well, he does constantly seek reassurance, right? Asking people if they are annoyed with him or if he's making them sad.
Yeah, but I don't think that he would want physical affection.
Maybe not.
He doesn't strike me as the kind of person or the kind of robot that would go out of his way to, or really appreciate being given it.
Physical affection, maybe, but I think he would appreciate
emotional support.
Yeah.
He doesn't really get a lot of that.
No, they pretty much just brush him off the whole time. One of the other extremely pessimistic things, is this going to be a sad episode where we just talk about how sad this book is?
That's how it's looking, anyway.
Everyone knows it's funny. We don't have to say that, right?
I mean, and we have said that it's funny, that there's humor to it.
That's true. I guess it's just what surprised me upon rereading it, you know?
Well, that's the thing that I love about rereading is that you get all of these different layers and nuances that aren't necessarily going to show up in your first read, especially if you first read it a number of years ago or as a child and you're coming back to a book as an adult.
For example, in my youth, reading about all of the bureaucratic systems that are designed to defeat you, that was just funny.
And now you're an adult dealing with that in real life.
Oh my God. Just the backwards rules that you can't win.
I feel like that hits a lot differently when you've had to deal with like insurance claims and mortgages and things like that.
Yeah, so many just really arbitrary, frustrating things that you have no control over.
And that really are designed to be as complicated as possible. And that are made so that you're going to give up before you actually make it through.
Or that you don't even know that you were supposed to be trying to begin with. I like specifically when at the beginning of the novel, Arthur Dent is dealing with a bulldozer or a team of bulldozers trying to destroy his house because a freeway is supposed to go where his house is, right? And he's arguing with the foreman or whoever's in charge, and the manager or whoever says, the plans have been on display for 3 months. And Arthur protests because they had been on display in a basement with no functioning light or staircase.
Not just in a basement, but in a file cabinet in a basement. Like not even on display in that basement.
It was the display cabinet, though. And just that idea of not even knowing you are in a conflict until it's too late is just the bleak.
I think that you're making the argument that this book is a horror novel.
It might be. I think that's what makes the book so timeless, though. These are just universal human experiences, unfortunately.
I do think that you're right that that's part of why it has such a lasting appeal, because we've all dealt with that kind of inane bureaucracy.
Well, and there are so many situations that poor Arthur gets put into. Martin Freeman was such a perfect casting choice for him, by the way. First of all, because he's like the ideal everyman, but also because I can't imagine Bilbo doing all of the things that Arthur Dent does to try to protect his home.
Yeah, I could see that.
I mean, this came out before The Hobbit, but time is an illusion. It doesn't matter. There are so many relatable moments and situations that Arthur has to deal with. I mean, struggling with bureaucracy comes up a couple of times, but I wonder if I can find another example.
I mean, I think meeting your ex-girlfriend and her current boyfriend.
Oh, yeah.
And being, that awkward moment and like having to be in close proximity to them and being unable to get out of that. That's a pretty relatable experience.
When he got drunk at the pub the night before the book starts, and he had been telling people about it at great length, he rather suspected. His clearest visual recollection was of a glazed look on other people's faces, which I have experienced.
You know, that actually kind of surprised me, though, because I would have thought that people in his community would be a little more concerned about freeways being built and houses being bulldozed.
Not their house.
And no one knowing about it, though. Like, if it happens to Arthur Dent, it could happen to you.
I think that's if it was truly on this scale, where it was actually your neighbor, I agree. But if you think of that as a metaphor, I think that is hard to argue against.
Yeah.
But just, things like that. Put into these goofy sci-fi contexts, right? Like, you don't generally run into your ex on a spaceship after your planet has been blown up.
How do you know?
They're not even really exes either. He was just hitting on her, and then Zaphod whisked her away.
Yeah, they're not proper exes, but I think that the situation is comparable enough if you take out the, spaceship setting.
Yeah. And all of those things are experiences that people have regardless of era, right? That makes it really
long lasting.
Yeah, I wanted to say like it's kind of an overdone book. I guess not the book itself. The references to this book are very tired, right? And it's super quotable, but you've seen all of those quotes 1,000 times.
And there's a lot of sci-fi that's come out in the intervening years.
Mm-hmm. However, the book itself is pretty evergreen, I would say.
It definitely, I think, deserves all of the accolades. Like, it's a good book, my not being in the mood to read it notwithstanding.
Right. I have not reread it because it feels so beaten to death. Just because all of the, 42. But that's not really fair to the actual text.
I mean, like I said, I think there's so much good sci-fi out there now that you don't have to, unless you are genuinely like a huge fan of it. But there are a lot of other books in the world.
Are you talking about rereading it?
Yeah.
You don't have to reread it? Oh yeah, no.
Yeah. I mean, I think reading it too, like if you haven't read it in the first place, it's a good book. It's worth reading, but it's not the only sci-fi book out there.
It's not the only sci-fi book out there. I would say it's worth reading though, because it has been so influential. And I do think there is value in that.
I'm not saying don't read it. I'm just saying like I don't think that you should feel that someone should feel compelled to read it just because it's popular. I don't know.
That's not what I was saying. I was saying you shouldn't dismiss it just because it's popular.
Yeah.
Even though every middle schooler in the world has parroted the lines from here until the end of time already, doesn't mean you should go, oh, that's just a dumb joke book.
No, I think we agree.
Yeah.
I think we're coming to the same point from two different angles.
One of the other very sad things in this book. Was there anything happy? No.
The thing that was happy was that it made me think of The Pirate Planet, which is a Doctor Who episode that Douglas Adams also wrote. That was a happy thing about this book.
I'm not sure if that's about the book.
It's not about the book. I just wanted to shoehorn in talking about Doctor Who and how Douglas Adams wrote for Doctor Who.
All right. I mean, for fuck's sake, the big reveal at the end is that Earth was entirely fabricated by like egomaniacs who just wanted to navel gaze and prove that they were smarter than everyone else.
I mean, maybe it's kind of happy that there's going to be an Earth 2.0, but that doesn't negate the fact that the first version of Earth was destroyed and everyone died.
Yeah, I don't think that's consolation at all.
Not really.
Unless it's implied that events will happen the exact same way throughout all of Earth's history because it was engineered, but it's not, because they're redesigning it. They're doing it different.
And even if events happened the same way, you're not necessarily going to get the same people. I mean, maybe they would have the same names, but
that was my presupposition, was if Earth was originally designed to do a thing, to come up with an answer, right, as a computer, wouldn't it come up with the same answer? And so therefore, shouldn't it do the exact same thing the second time?
But even if you get the same answer and the same components, they're still not the people who died on Earth 1.
Well, that's a philosophical question. If every single molecule gets destroyed and then recreated to teleport you somewhere, are you still the same person? That's not my question. I mean, no, I don't think they would be the same people. But I guess, do you think that Earth 2 would end up with, like, if they're redoing the coastlines, that would be enough of a difference to ripple effect, right?
Yeah, I would think that you would get some differences, especially because, like you said, the old man talks about how he's added fjords to Africa or whatever it was. I don't think that you would get the same events necessarily and the same people.
Because they didn't design it exactly the same.
Yeah.
But I wonder if in Hitchhiker's Guide, world where Earth was a computer, could they have done it exactly the same and actually just made an Earth 2.0? Which would then say that Arthur Dent would have to go kill himself and then take his place to get his family back. But now that is some like sci-fi plotline.
I kind of want to read that fan fiction though.
And then, but then he'll know everything so he can stop, what's her name? Zooey Deschanel. That's not her name.
Trillian?
Yeah. But then he could stop Trillian from going with Zaphod.
But so it's kind of implied, at least in my reading, that he doesn't have a ton of friends.
Right.
So I don't necessarily think he would have to kill himself to like integrate into his own friend group again.
You don't think his parents would notice if they suddenly had 2 sons?
Or they could just switch off.
Oh, so you think that the original Arthur Dent, or no, the new Arthur Dent would be in on the con?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I could see that working too. I would watch that sitcom. What a bleak future Douglas Adams has imagined, where all technological advances just make things worse. Like, what the fuck, man?
That's not entirely inaccurate.
I mean, I think computers today are better than computers 30 years ago. I feel confident saying that.
They're better. And I suppose that they have made things better.
Whereas in this books, in this world, in this timeline, they've invented a radio that instead of turning dials is controlled by gestures. And so in order to not change the channel, you have to stand perfectly still.
You know what's kind of cool though is that I have a radio that's turned on and off just by gesturing. So it's
really?
Yeah. I mean, that's not how you it's literally just the on and off. But the on and off is motion sensitive or motion activated.
Have you ever done it on accident?
No, because I don't stick my hand over there.
Okay.
Like it's in a spot where that's not, because you have to swipe your hand like over the actual physical object.
Okay, so if you're like sitting somewhere else listening to it, you're not going to turn it off by accident.
Right. Yeah.
Because that was the radio that Adams had invented for this story.
Right. So it's not exactly a one-to-one comparison.
That is cool though. It is. Oh, the future is fun.
I do think it's interesting to see how some of Adams' inventions have come to life in some sense.
I'm just reading his description of an ebook in an ebook was like made me so pleased. That's happy. There we go. That's a happy thing in this book. Is the charming realities versus his imagined future. I guess it's not the future, it's just alien tech.
Yeah, alien tech.
Advanced technology. The future of technology. I'm not wrong. I don't have to go back and fix the whole thing.
I was really saddened by the description of the machine that couldn't properly brew tea, though.
Right?
That was just depressing.
They had invented a machine that scans the person's taste buds and their nutritional needs and their brain waves, and then ultimately it still makes something that tastes terrible. And so that's just the humor in futility, the irony of theoretical progress that is actually just worse than doing things the old-fashioned way. And that is funny. But yeah,
it's a very darkly humorous book when you think about it.
I mean, I think when you read it when you're not 14.
Yes.
I really do think I appreciated it more because I just remember thinking, Marvin said, sucks to be him. I think I got a lot more out of it reading it as someone living in an adult world. But like the reveal that Zaphod Beeblebrox, I think I pronounced that correctly.
ZB.
The fact that Zaphod has an entire part of his brain that he can't control, that's giving him ideas without his knowledge, that is completely undetectable. And then he finds out that the person who did this to him, that separated his brain and quarantined part of his consciousness, was himself. And he found this out because he burned his own initials into that portion of his brain. If that is not my definition of horror of, or not my definition of horror, but one of my favorite brands of horror where you don't know yourself and are unconfident of your own free will. But it's supposed to be funny. I remember laughing at that.
It is horrifying. I mean, it's a really horrifying concept. I think ultimately what this podcast episode can be summed up to or shortened down to is we are making an argument that Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is a horror novel.
It's a horror novel, 100%.
It's not sci-fi, or it is sci-fi, it's horror sci-fi.
And I mean, it's funny horror, but it's horror.
I think it would be interesting to read some of the subsequent books and see how they carry those themes along. Like I said, it's been a long time since I've read them.
I did want to keep going. I was pretty surprised when the book ended. Okay, I wasn't, because I was watching the page count like a hawk trying to finish it in time. But as narratively, because I forgot where the story like gets broken up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know Arthur Dent eventually does go to Earth 2.0, not at the time where it was destroyed, but like in the history of Earth, or before it had matured back to the proper time or whatever. And I thought that would be in this book, but I guess not. It's later.
Clearly not. I also think it's interesting. I think that Eoin, I'm probably horribly mispronouncing his name, Colfer, the Artemis Fowl guy, author, has written sanctioned sequels to the series, I believe. I'm going to look this up so I can quote myself on it. Yeah, he wrote And Another Thing, which is the 6th and final installment of Douglas Adams' trilogy of 6 books. It doesn't say how he was actually chosen to, the Wikipedia article doesn't say how he was actually chosen to write the book.
Well, if our crack research team couldn't figure it out, then I'm sure there's just no answer available.
I guess so. We'll never know.
Well, before we move on to our ending segment of today's episode, Sarah, why should you read this book?
You should read this book if you enjoy sci-fi, if you enjoy horror, if you enjoy
Come on. This is not actually a horror book.
I know.
It's dark humor.
I know it's not actually a horror book. But if you want to read, a foundational science fiction author,
if you want to laugh and kind of wince at the same time, then definitely read this book.
If you enjoyed the movie.
Oh yeah. I remember the movie being a pretty close adaptation. I'm sure I will be forced to eat my words, but
well, we'll do a Discord watch party of it at some point.
I like that idea. Well, Sarah, I heard that you had a pet peeve.
I have a pet peeve. This is a huge pet peeve. I was reading fan fiction on AO3, searching by a particular pairing, and there was a story that was tagged with that pairing. And then in the summary, it said, "This isn't that romantic relationship. I just added that tag so more readers find this story." And like, fuck you. I'm sorry. That's an abuse of tags. You don't do that.
That is like the chaotic evil version of the AO3 tags, which we love so much because they are so descriptive and help you find exactly what you're looking for. So you can't corrupt it.
I mean, like, at least they said it in the summary, so I didn't go into, I probably wouldn't have picked up that story anyway because the summary didn't sound that great, but
well, someone resorting to cheap tricks like that.
Yeah. But at least they acknowledged it up front, so I didn't, go into it expecting that there would be that pairing if I had chosen to read it. But I got real mad when I saw that.
Can you imagine? You read long ass fic too. A 200,000 word story that you're hoping that maybe they get together in the last second or in the epilogue or something.
I'm thinking it's just like a slow burn,
Yeah, because you read slow burn too. Oh, that would be evil if someone actually did that.
Oh man. I would, yeah.
Holy shit. Yeah, what a weird thing to feel betrayed by, but it does kind of feel like a betrayal. I trusted you.
It really does. I mean, like the tags are so useful because they allow you to sort through the kinds of fic that you're feeling like reading. And if people start tagging things that aren't in their stories, how can you trust the tags, and how can you find what you're actually feeling like reading?
I get mad enough when a fic has a tag for something that is just mentioned in one line of dialogue but doesn't actually happen in the story. But that's a flexible definition of tag, but that's not like outright.
That's not just lying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I saw that and I was like, oh, I have a pet peeve for an episode of Fiction Fans.
Yeah, because that's horrible.
Yeah. I sent you a lot of really angry Discord messages about it.
As you should.
Yeah. What kind of monster does that?
I don't know.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Fiction Fans.
Come disagree with us. We're on Twitter and Instagram at FictionFansPod. You can also email us at fictionfanspod@gmail.com.
If you enjoyed the episode, please rate and review on Spotify, as well as Apple Podcasts, and follow us wherever your podcasts live.
Thanks again for listening, and may your villains always be defeated. Bye.
Bye.